I work with Prudential, and I'm under enterprise architecture, and I was one of the developers behind the Amazon Alexa skill at Prudential. Today I'll be going through kind of the journey we went through and kind of the difficulties of creating a skill in a corporate environment. And I lost something. All right, so to start off, here's our timeline. Maybe a little hard to see, but I'll walk you through it. So we started off early on just kind of doing research. Weren't really sure where we would be going in the voice environment. I then kind of put together some demos, and we kind of showed these off to different groups within Prudential. After we showed all these different groups kind of the capabilities and where it could go, we had retirement bite on it, and they decided to move along with producing an actual skill. So that is what became the Prudential retirement skill. So it took some time actually doing the development. We spent a lot of time working on the security, as well as also designing the response and what kind of a conversation we wanted it to have. Then we went ahead and went live with it in April 2nd, 2018, and we've had numbers a little out of date, but I think we've had close to 1,800 users so far use the skill. About 1,800.
Oh.
Sorry. So to start off, I'll just go through a quick run-through of what a normal conversation would go like. Unfortunately, I'm not going to actually use an echo device because of the reliability. Sometimes I've had a little iffy doing demos. So here we have a user talking to their Alexa. So they'd start off, Alexa, ask Prudential for my balance. Alexa would come back and prompt them, asking them for their PIN, which they would give, and Alexa will respond with their balance as well as any other information. So in this scenario, Prudential Retirement is our actual skill name, so that's what we use to invoke the skill. And then asking for your balance is our intent, which actually triggers the conversation. We have used a 6-digit PIN to actually secure it, which you will set in the login process. And then below is kind of a generic model of what response the Alexa will give back to the user. I will go into detail on a later slide about what actual information is given. And then in this scenario, the user has multiple Prudential retirement accounts. So it will then ask the user if they want to hear more details about the specific accounts. So if the user responds with yes, it will go through those accounts and will tell them information about each plan that they have. So what we spent a lot of time on was actually designing the conversation. So this is a little snippet of the flow for the actual Prudential retirement skill. So obviously this is kind of simplified. We had a very large document that had every path covered. We took care to design all the error handling and all the little loops to go back and forth when people don't understand how to use it or for when Alexa doesn't understand what the user wants. It was kind of a little difficult because of all the shortcomings and all the different input we required. So gathering all the input kind of took a lot of different slots, from getting a PIN number to getting users' responses, and then kind of taking all of those and wrapping them back into responses that the user would understand and would like to hear. So as I said, this kind of shows a little more about what information is given to the user. So highlighted in blue is the actual dynamic information, and this is what changes from person to person. So this would be if somebody had one account, and it would start off by giving the person's name, what the plan name is, so what the actual plan type is, their balance, their vested amount, their loan balance, and their personal performance for that account. So this is the information that we kind of thought users would like to hear and would like to get to within a nice, simple interaction. We think that this is kind of one of the more common use cases for people who want to check their account. Is this is the information they want to see, and the process to go talk to your Alexa device is a lot shorter than going online, logging into your console, just to get this little bit of information you want to see. We also have vested amount. We have the definition of that as well. So you could also ask, what is vesting? which, kind of a little, for example, I didn't know what vesting was when I first started this, so it kind of was informative to me. But that kind of shows the different types of information that will change from user to user. So here we have kind of the more detailed flow of what's actually happening in an interaction. So it starts off on the bottom left from an actual person talking to their device, where this service then gets streamed up to the AWS cloud and works and is kind of hit with their natural language processing. And then a request is then sent down to Prudential, where we go ahead and handle it. So we first have to validate a signature and do some logic that is required by Amazon for all financial skills, and actually for all skills non-hosted on AWS. So once it comes into Prudential, we then go ahead and create kind of what we think the user is looking for, and we build out what we think the response is. And then if we think the user, if we know the user wants specific information about their account, we will go and reach back into our databases and pull the information that is important to the user and present it to them in that final response. So a lot of this is built out in our API management platform. We use Apogee. So this would be what we use to host all of our code, where normal kind of non-corporate environment, you would use the AWS Lambda functions is what Alexa or Amazon suggests. So to dive a little deeper into that, we kind of have the kind of detailed version of our Apogee environment. So this kind of shows all the different apps and products we built out to handle all the different aspects of the flow. So it's not as simple as taking a response and taking a request and giving back a response. We have several policies just dedicated to the security around signing in, as well as also validating that signature at runtime when somebody submits a request, as well as also just to get in and out of Prudential in a secure manner. Then after that, we have one policy that actually does the understanding of what the user is looking to do, and then calls another policy to just grab the data once we recognize that the user is looking for this data. So diving a little bit into the login process, here are some screenshots from the application. So these are when you sign in the Alexa app on your phone. And then on the top right is a correlating OAuth flow, which is the actual login process, or the security we use to handle the login process. So on this first screen, you're seeing that you have to go to the actual Alexa skill and hit enable. You're then prompted with a Prudential login screen that is hosted by us on Prudential. And then after submitting your credentials, you are then brought to our terms and conditions page, where you read it and then accept it at the end. After accepting the terms and conditions page, you are prompted to submit a PIN. So this will be the PIN number that you use at runtime to validate you are who you are. We prompted for a 6-digit PIN to add a little more security to it. Then once you go ahead and log in and submit your PIN, you're then prompted with a screen saying that you successfully logged in and that you are now ready to test your skill. At this moment, through OAuth, both Amazon and Prudential know your bearer token and can validate it at runtime, which is the security that goes along with the PIN to actually validate the user. And on the bottom right is a little snippet from our little demo, which kind of shows the actual use of Alexa, which at this point would be either done on your mobile device or on an Echo device. So one question that was always asked is how we kind of keep up with all the changing, code and all the changing environments that Alexa presents with us. So the developer portal on their website is one of the main resources of information. I check that pretty periodically, I'd say pretty much weekly. Here they post all the new functionalities that they add to Alexa, which it's important to keep up with because sometimes it can make issues with how your code is previously. So, and they push updates, it's pretty good to pay attention to them. So this is why I frequent this page. They also have webinars, Alexa Dev Days, and weekly office hours. So these are some things that kind of allow you to ask questions and kind of learn a little more. So this is kind of where we've sharpened up our skills, as well as ask all the harder questions that we can't just find on their forums. This is where we can, ask about our specific security questions and have an engineer there to actually answer them for us or walk us through how they suggest doing it and getting best practices. We also go and look at they call it their ASK cookbook. So this can be found on GitHub, which is where they post all their example code and all their kind of tutorials. So this is great resource to kind of learn all the little tricks that they put in to different skill templates that allow you to do different functionalities. So some of the lessons we learned through building our Alexa skill. Security was a big one. There's a lot that we didn't originally know, and through demoing, we didn't need. For example, signature validation and timestamp validation. This is something that is not mandatory for doing a demo in their dev environment, but is something that is required for going to production. So these are two things that we kind of took some time to do because we weren't exactly sure best practices around them, as well as PIN validation and bearer token validation. So these both relate to us having a account linked skill. So because our financial skill allows users to get their own personal information from Prudential, we need both of these to validate that the user is who they say they are and that it is the right, and that the Echo device is making a call on behalf of that user. Another thing that we learned was monitoring. Monitoring has been, a big thing for us because, we'd like to know when it goes down. We want to make sure the downtime is as small as possible for all users. So we use the Alexa simulation API, which is provided by Amazon, which kind of allows you to test your skill through a command line interface. So this was important because it gave us the ability to run a check every so often and validate that the skill is up and running and users can see it the way that they expect to see it. We also run tests internally to make sure that all the responses that go back to users are properly formatted and are, returned or give the response that we're looking to give. And then another good functionality for monitoring is the actual testing tool in the development environment. So this kind of is where we found you could use Alexa almost like a chatbot. So you're prompted with a little window where you could say, Alexa, ask Prudential Retirement what my account balance is. And you can get the actual information as if you were talking to a device. So this makes it a little faster sometimes to test it, whereas instead of finding your device and doing it, you just do it from your laptop. You don't have to talk to it, and you can just keep that and script it so it happens over and over again and make sure that we're up and working. Some tips that we learned about the portal was that they only have one environment. Once you are in an environment, you can make all the changes you want. And then once you publish the skill, it goes through their certification process and then is a production skill. However, we kind of try to keep people out of different accounts so that they couldn't, go and certify a skill that we haven't finished yet. So we went and we created different accounts for each environment that we had. This kind of allowed us to match the internal services with the Alexa services and make sure that we're always pointing a certain environment to the right environment, and also allowed us to control who had access to these environments so that we didn't make changes where we shouldn't be making changes. And then once we got to the testing phase, it was kind of hard to get users to test just by adding them to the account. The login process was difficult, and it gave them access to the whole skill, which was not ideal. So we actually went ahead and we used the Alexa beta tool, which allowed us to create our skill as a beta skill, which just let us send an email out to all of the users we wanted to test, and they could go in, play around with the skill as if they were logging into it when it is in production, and then give us feedback on it. This tool wasn't originally available, but came out during our development process, which gave us that capability to reach out to everybody. Reach out to everybody and get their feedback on the skill in real time. So looking forward, we have a couple of things that we want to try out. One is Alexa for Business. So this is, I'm sure you've heard today, Alexa for Business is bringing actual Echo devices into the office. We are running, quick little demos, but we are trying to be on the forefront of the Alexa for Business planning. So we have it, and we're working towards creating it so we can start our meetings and call people through devices in our office. So these are kind of some of the services we're looking at that Amazon has to offer. We're also looking at private skills, which, if you don't know, are skills that you can create a subset to and only allow certain users to use. So this would mean that we could, use them internally and allow users internally to get information that we would not want consumers to be able to see. And then one thing that helped us along is our voice assistant community. So we created a developer community for our voice assistants, which gave us a playground for people in different areas of our company to get together and talk about best practices, what they think worked for them, kind of to shorten our dev time and get the best quality products out there. So we created a site for it where internally where we kind of all got together and kind of, again, shared our ideas. We had a couple meetings, and what came out of it was a list of best practices that a lot of people, basically we pooled all our research together and shared our little demo skills, which we kind of were able to test others and kind of get the best ones and kind of see what we wanted to bring to production. So with that, I'll open up to questions. I'm sure there's a lot. Yes?
Hi, I'm a reporter for financial planning. I have a question. So the skills that you have for the Prudential retirement, I guess, skill, can you, from what I saw from a press release, that you can only check balances, see interest rates and that kind of stuff. But can you, right now, can you actually buy products, Prudential products through the skill yet?
No. So the question was, can you buy products through the Prudential retirement skill? No, we have limited the functionality just to receiving information. We did not want to allow users to change anything. We're still learning on this platform, as is everyone, and we thought it'd be a great tool to get your information in a faster way, but we wanted to make sure that any changes were made through a secure manner, or a more secure manner. Yes?
Knowing what you now know about the difficulty of security and the account linking and stuff like that, would you have thought that maybe in retrospect your best first skill would have been something that should have been more public, or did the additional functionality offset the additional work?
Yep, so the question was, knowing what we know now, should we have started off with a more public skill that did not use user information and kind of get our bearing there before we move to a skill that was account linking? I think that it was a great first skill because it got us to engage all the teams that we would ever need. This allowed us to kind of build up the relationship and kind of go through all the hoops and create some paths that we will need for any skill going forward. So in future releases of skills, again, we know everyone we need to talk to now and can release those a lot quicker. Thank you. Yes?
Are those hoops being mandated by Amazon Alexa, or are they being mandated because the nature of your industry or Prudential is out?
So the hoops that we had jumped through, they were some mandated by Amazon and some were mandated by Prudential. So for example, the signature validation and the PIN validation, those are things that were required by Amazon. They were things that we knew we had to handle and had to determine how we wanted to do it internally. We also put things in place internally where we said, if we want this information, this is how we're going to do it. We want to make sure that we have that laid out so that people can't abuse this process. Are there any more questions? Yes?
Was there any skepticism when you put together the Amazon Alexa skill team to tackle this, this new functionality, in Prudential?
We thought going into this that we would have all the resources to complete a skill of this, magnitude. We didn't really have any doubts about it. We just, wanted to make sure that we did it in the best way possible to kind of lay the groundwork for future development.
Why is there so little users? If 1,800 users just seems really small from the launch back in April.
So those are unique users. So it's not reoccurring users, as well as also it's only limited to Prudential retirement customers. Yes.
Now that you have this under your belt, are there next projects coming up that plan to tap Alexa?
I think we do. I'm not sure what I'm at liberty to say, but I'm sure we do have some projects in the pipeline, some future projects in the pipeline. Yes?
Do you have any feedback from the customers who have used this skill?
We have heard that a lot of customers like that it's a lot faster way to get to the information than they previously had to go through. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Yes.
What language did you use for the Alexa skill?
So for the Alexa skill, we coded it mostly in JavaScript. We used Java for the skill signature validation, and then within Apogee, there's some pre-written policies which we utilize for kind of some of the security aspects, but most of it was written in JavaScript. Thank you. All right. If there are no more questions, thank you for your time. Hope I was a lot of information.